The clink of cutlery against porcelain, the soft hum of the dishwasher, the distant laughter of our children from the living room. These were the sounds of my life, the symphony of domestic bliss, played out almost religiously every evening. My husband Mark sat across from me at the polished mahogany table, engrossed in an article on his tablet. His dark hair, still thick and slightly disheveled from his day, caught the overhead light. His strong, capable hands, the same hands that had built our life, that held me through countless nights, occasionally tapped a rhythm against the smooth surface of the device. He looked up then, his smile a practiced, comforting curve, a warmth in his blue eyes that had once set my world alight. "Good day, honey?" he asked, his voice a low, familiar murmur. "Fine, love, just fine." My answer was a reflex, a smooth, well-worn phrase. It tasted like ash on my tongue, but the smile I offered in return was perfectly convincing, a masterpiece of artifice honed over years. On the surface, our life was a flawless tableau, a magazine spread come to life. The house, tastefully decorated, always impeccably clean. The children, bright, healthy, and loved. Mark, a successful architect, devoted, handsome, stable. And me, the graceful matriarch, the effortless homemaker, the woman who had it all. Friends envied us, parents admired us. We were the embodiment of the dream. But inside, a hollow echo resided, a cavernous space where joy used to dance. The perfection was a brittle shell, exquisitely crafted, but fragile. I would often stand in the middle of our spacious living room, sunlight streaming through the French doors, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, and feel utterly, devastatingly alone. Mark and I had built this empire together, brick by brick, dream by dream, but somewhere along the way, we had forgotten to build a bridge between ourselves. Our conversations were transactional. Logistics of school runs, grocery lists, upcoming social engagements. Compliments were polite, touches were routine, born of habit more than desire. The passion, once a roaring bonfire, had dwindled to embers, then to cold ash, leaving behind only the ghost of warmth. I remember one particular evening. We were in bed. The sheets were crisp, the room was cool, the city lights a distant blur through the window. Mark turned to me, his arm instinctively reaching for me, pulling me closer. His kiss was soft, familiar, tasting faintly of the mint toothpaste we both used. I responded, my body going through the motions, a well-trained instrument playing a forgotten melody. But my mind was 1,000 miles away, drifting through memories of a younger me, a me who would have met his desire with an answering fire, a spontaneous hunger that devoured restraint. Now, I lay there, acutely aware of the weight of his arm, the rhythm of his breath, the silent plea in his touch that I wouldn't meet. The act concluded, swiftly, efficiently, a box ticked. He rolled over, a soft sigh escaping him, and within minutes his breathing deepened into the steady rhythm of sleep, thoughtful. I, however, lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the room amplifying the silence in my soul. A knot of dissatisfaction tightened in my stomach, a cold, hard stone of loneliness that no amount of external perfection could ever dissolve. Sad, it was a suffocating emptiness, a slow, quiet drowning in the waters of my own perfect life. The crack in the facade, though, began subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a hairline fracture in a diamond. It began with Liam. Liam, Mark's younger brother, was a whirlwind. Where Mark was granite, Liam was shifting sands. Where Mark was predictable, Liam was a delightful chaos. He was an artist, a photographer with an eye for the unconventional, a spirit untamed by the corporate ladder. He lived in a loft downtown, filled with art supplies, vintage cameras, and an eclectic collection of books. Energetic. His laugh was a boisterous explosion of sound. His eyes, a startling shade of green, held a mischievous glint. He was everything Mark wasn't, everything our world of quiet order wasn't. Our interactions had always been peripheral, relegated to family gatherings, Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthday parties. Liam would arrive late, bringing some exotic dish or a ridiculously thoughtful gift, and then disappear into conversations with my children, drawing out their giggles with tales of his adventures. He'd offer me a quick, easy smile, a polite query about my day, then drift away. Thoughtful. I saw him as family. A beloved, if slightly eccentric, brother-in-law. Nothing more. Then came the texts. It was after Clara's 10th birthday party, a chaotic affair at a trampoline park.
Liam had been the designated photographer, capturing candid shots of the children midair. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. Surprised, it was Liam. "Hey, amazing party today. The kids looked like they were having a blast. Attach some of the best shots for you guys. Let me know if you want the high-res versions."
I smiled, a genuine smile this time. Liam was always so thoughtful. I replied, thanking him. A few minutes later, another text. "No problem at all. By the way, that chocolate cake you made? Seriously epic. My taste buds are still sending you thank you notes." My cheeks warmed. Mark had barely noticed the cake, or at least hadn't commented beyond a polite, delicious. It was a small thing, but the specific, appreciative feedback from Liam felt like a tiny, unexpected spark. I responded playfully. Glad someone appreciated my culinary masterpiece. I practically wrestled a dragon for that cocoa powder. His reply was immediate, accompanied by a laughing emoji. I believe it. Heard the cocoa powder wars are brutal. You're a true warrior. That was it. Just a few innocent texts about a birthday party and a cake. But a warmth spread through me. A faint echo of being seen. Truly seen and appreciate.
D, that had been absent for so long. It was a fragile feeling, like tracing a forgotten melody in the dark. Over the next few weeks, these innocuous texts became more frequent. They weren't flirtatious, not overtly. They were about life, about art, about observations. He asked me about the book I was reading, remembered a throwaway comment I'd made about a gallery exhibit, and sent me a link to an article about the artist. He saw a certain type of flower, knew I loved gardening, and snapped a picture, sending it with the caption, "Thought of you." Excited. Each message was a tiny jolt, an intravenous drip of attention. I found myself anticipating them, my heart giving a little flutter when my phone vibrated with his name. I'd slip away to read them in the privacy of the pantry or during a quiet moment in the bathroom. Frustrated, the denial was fierce, a relentless internal monologue. It's just family. He's just being friendly. It means nothing. But the adrenaline, that sharp, almost painful rush of excitement, told a different story. Sad. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Mark was working late, and the children were at their after-school activities. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, feeling the usual ennui settle around me like a damp cloak. My phone buzzed. It was Liam. Surprised. "Hey, you seem a bit quiet today. Everything all right?" I had a weird feeling.
My spoon clattered against the ceramic bowl. How could he know? He couldn't. It was a trick of timing, a coincidence. But the thought that he might have somehow sensed my mood, my internal listlessness, sent a shiver down my spine. I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. "Just a regular Tuesday, Liam. Why the weird feeling?" "Just a vibe. You're usually so vibrant, even in your texts. Today felt muted. Don't worry, just checking in on my favorite sister-in-law." The words "favorite sister-in-law" were a playful deflection, I knew, a way to anchor his concern in family. But the underlying sentiment, that he noticed, that he cared enough to ask, cut through the carefully constructed indifference I had built around myself. It was a crack in the dam, and a tiny trickle of something dangerous, something exhilarating, began to flow. We talked then, not in texts, but on tea.
He phoned. For the first time in what felt like forever, I truly talked. Sad, I told him about the subtle pressures of maintaining the perfect life, the loneliness, the feeling of losing myself. He listened, truly listened, his voice a steady, grounding presence. He didn't offer platitudes or solutions, he just echoed my feelings, made me feel validated, thoughtful. "It's okay to not be okay, you know," he said softly, his voice a balm to my raw nerves. "Even when everything looks shiny on the outside." Grateful. When I hung up, the kitchen was bathed in the dim glow of twilight. The soup was forgotten, but a warmth spread through my chest, a sensation I hadn't felt in years. Excited. It was the warmth of being understood, of being seen for the flawed, yearning woman I was, not the perfect facade I presented to the world. It was a dangerous warmth, I knew, but for the first time in a very long time, I felt alive.
The act itself unfolded with a horrifying inevitability. A slow-motion car crash I felt myself accelerating towards, unable to brake. It happened on a brisk autumn afternoon, a Sunday. Mark was away on a last-minute business trip, an unexpected conference that had him flying out Friday evening and returning Monday morning. A rare window, a sudden, terrifying expanse of unsupervised time. Liam had called earlier that morning, ostensibly to ask if I needed any help with the kids, knowing Mark was out of town. His voice had been low, casual, but underneath I detected a tremor, an unspoken question that resonated deep within me. We arranged for him to come over around 3 o'clock to help me organize the garage, a pretense so thin it was almost transparent. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the house. I could practically taste the forbidden fruit, bit.
Terror and sweet on my tongue. Energetic. When he arrived, the autumn sunlight, pale and weak, slanted through the half-open garage door, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. He was wearing an old faded denim shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms dusted with fine, dark hair. His eyes, those green eyes that held so much mischief and now so much unacknowledged yearning, met mine across the jumble of forgotten tools and dusty boxes. The air crackled. The pretense of garage organizing dissolved into an unspoken understanding, heavy and palpable. Surprised, we started, feigned industry, moving boxes, sorting old camping gear. My hands brushed his as we reached for the same dusty blanket. A static charge jumped between our skin, startling and electric. My breath caught in my throat. His gaze, no longer playful, was intense, dissecting, seeing past all my careful layers. He reached out then, his fingers brushing a stray strand of hair from my face, a touch so tender it brought a sudden, unexpected pang to my chest. My pulse quickened. A frantic hummingbird trapped in my rib cage. Whispers. "You know," he murmured, his voice a low, rough whisper that seemed to vibrate through the very air. "You look beautiful, even covered in garage dust."
The words, so simple, so direct, stripped away every defense. My breath hitched. I felt a blush creep up my neck, a fiery confession. My gaze dropped, then flickered back to his. His face was close. His scent, a mix of autumn leaves and something uniquely Liam, filled my senses. The world outside, the children's distant shouts from the park, the gentle rustle of falling leaves, all faded away. There was only us, suspended in this charged, silent bubble. "Liam," I whispered, the name a plea, a warning, an invitation. He didn't speak, but his eyes, filled with a raw hunger, searched mine. He stepped closer, one step, then another. The space between us evaporated. His hand, warm and calloused, cupped my cheek, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. My eyes fluttered shut, a dizzying surrender. His lips, soft yet firm, brushed mine. A hesitant, feather-light touch that exploded into a searing inferno. And then there was no turning back. The kiss.
Epened, consuming, desperate. My hands, which had been pressed against his chest in a last futile attempt at resistance, now clung to the soft fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer, as if I could melt into him. His arms wrapped around my waist, lifting me slightly, pressing my body against his. The sudden, overwhelming sensation of desire, of being desired, was a tsunami washing away years of arid loneliness. It wasn't gentle or slow. It was fierce, a storm breaking. Rushed. We stumbled through the garage door, through the mudroom, into the quiet, sun-drenched sanctuary of the living room. Frustrated, my mind screamed protests, images of Mark, of our children, flashing behind my eyelids. No, 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 but the primal current, surging through me, was too strong, too overwhelming. Each touch, each kiss, each ragged breath, stolen between gasps, chipped away at the carefully constructed walls of my life.
He lowered me onto the soft, cream-colored rug in front of the unlit fireplace. The same rug where my children played, where Mark and I shared quiet evenings. The irony was a bitter taste, but it was lost in the swirling vortex of sensation. His lips, warm and hungry, moved from my mouth to my neck, eliciting shivers that were both pleasure and terror. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, a silent plea for more, for everything. His hands, so tender yet so possessive, traced the curves of my body through my clothes, the rustle of fabric, the soft moans escaping my throat, the frantic thumping of our combined hearts were the only sounds in the suddenly silent house. When his fingers found the zipper of my dress, the sound was deafening in the stillness, a stark announcement that the line had been
And irrevocably crossed. Thoughtful. The shame was a sudden cold wave, but it was quickly obliterated by the intoxicating rush of being wanted, truly wanted, by this man who saw me, truly saw me. His eyes, when they met mine, were full of a raw, primal emotion that mirrored my own. In that moment, I wasn't Mark's wife. I wasn't the children's mother. I was just a woman consumed by a desperate, illicit hunger. The sensations were overwhelming. The rough texture of his denim against my bare skin, the faint scent of his cologne mingling with my own perfume, the taste of him on my lips, the surprising gentleness of his strength. Energetic. Every nerve ending seemed to awaken after a long slumber, screaming with life, with longing, with pure, unadulterated sensation. It was raw, it was messy, it was everything I had denied myself for so long. When it was over, long pause, the silence that followed was crushing. My breath came in ragged gasps, my body thrumming with a mixture of spent passion and dawning horror. Sad I lay there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, feeling the phantom weight of him, the lingering scent of him on my skin. The sunlight, once pale, now seemed harsh and unforgiving, exposing the ugliness of my transgression.
Liam shifted beside me, his hand reaching for mine, his fingers intertwining with mine, a gesture of shared intimacy and complicity. I squeezed his hand, a silent acknowledgement, but my heart was already sinking, a leaden weight in my chest. The exhilaration was gone, replaced by a searing wave of self-loathing. I had betrayed my husband, my children, my entire life, and I had done it with his brother. The enormity of the act, the sheer, unimaginable depth of the betrayal, settled upon me like a suffocating shroud. I closed my eyes, a single tear tracing a hot path down my temple, lost in the tangled mess of my own making. The double life began then, a suffocating cloak woven from lies and stolen glances. Every moment became an agonizing tightrope walk. Mark returned on Monday morning, tired but cheerful, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in his absence. He kissed me, a fond, familiar peck on the cheek, and I had to pee.
Hissically restrained myself from recoiling. His touch, once comforting, now felt like a brand, searing my skin with guilt. My days were a constant performance. I smiled, I laughed, I made dinner, I helped with homework, all while a frantic, terrified animal clawed at the inside of my chest. Rushed. I became hyper-vigilant, constantly scanning for signs of suspicion, for any crack in my facade. My phone became an extension of my paranoia. Every notification sent a jolt of ice through my veins. Was it Liam? Was it something Mark might see? Whispers. I kept it face down, screen locked, always within reach, but also always out of sight. Liam and I would exchange quick, furtive texts, messages that seemed innocent to anyone else. A photo of a piece of art, a link to an article, a query about a family matter, but held a hidden language between us. A small emoji of a whispered secret, a timing that spoke volumes. Energetic. The adrenaline of sending and receiving these messages was addictive, a dangerous drug that temporarily numbed the crushing guilt.
Our clandestine meetings were fraught with peril and a perverse, exhilarating thrill. They were snatched moments, a chance encounter at a coffee shop when Mark was at work, a quick walk in the park while the children were at school, a late-night drive to a deserted spot where we could talk and sometimes touch in the darkness. Each time, the risk was immense, the possibility of discovery a constant, gnawing fear. My heart would pound like a drum solo every time I saw Mark's car approaching as I returned, every time his questions felt too probing, every time Liam's name came up in conversation. I remember one particularly close call. We were at Mark's parents' house for a Sunday lunch. Liam was there, his usual boisterous self, but I could feel the invisible thread of tension between us, stretched taut. I caught his eye across the crowded table, a fleeting moment where our gazes locked, and an entire unspoken conversation
Passed between us. Gasps. Then Mark, who had been chatting with his mother, turned suddenly. His eyes, for a split second, flickered between Liam and me. My breath froze in my lungs, my entire body tensed. Had he seen? Had he noticed? Rushed, I forced a bright, artificial laugh, turning to my plate, feigning interest in the roast potatoes. Liam, with incredible presence of mind, immediately launched into a story about a recent photography gig, diverting Mark's attention. Exhaled sharply. I felt a wave of icy terror, followed by a flush of relief, so strong it almost made me dizzy. Sad, the paranoia transformed me. I became distant, irritable with the children, snapping at them for minor infractions. Mark, noticing my withdrawal, would sometimes ask, Is everything okay, honey? You seem a little distracted. Sarcastic. I'd offer some vague excuse. Just tired, Mark. A lot on my mind. And then compound the lie with an overabundance of affection, hugging him tighter than usual, kissing him with a forced passion that felt utterly grotesque to me. Sad. Every loving gesture I gave Mark was a lie. Every smile a betrayal. Every shared bed a torture chamber of my own making. Sad sleep became a luxury. I would lie awake for hours, the image of Mark's face, of Liam's face, swirling in a tormenting kaleidoscope in my mind. The what-ifs were endless. What if Mark found out? What if he left me? About the children? How could I have done this? Crying. The physical manifestations of my guilt were relentless, a constant knot in my stomach that made eating a chore, a dry metallic taste in my mouth, cold sweats that left me shivering even in a warm room, gasps. Sometimes, in the dead of night, a full-blown panic attack would grip me. My heart would race, my chest would tighten, and I would gasp for air, feeling like an invisible hand was squeezing my throat. Tearful, I would slip out of bed, careful not to wake Mark, and huddle in the darkened bathroom, tears streaming silently down my face, suffocating under the weight of my own deceit.
Liam and I, in our stolen moments, were a paradox. There was a raw, undeniable connection between us, a shared understanding that had been missing from my marriage. He saw my vulnerabilities. He cherished them. He made me feel alive in a way Mark hadn't in years. But even in the midst of our stolen passion, the shadow of our secret loomed. His touches were both comforting and condemning. His kisses tasted of desperate longing and bitter shame. We were two moths drawn to a forbidden flame, knowing it would burn us both. And with each meeting, the feeling of self-hatred deepened, curdling in my gut, poisoning everything I touched. My reflection in the mirror showed a stranger, haggard, haunted eyes peering back at me, a constant shadow under them, a ghost of the woman I used to be. The vibrant, confident woman Mark had married was gone, replaced by a nervous, lying shell. The crash came, not with a sudden explosion, but with a quiet,
Devastating implosion. It was a Sunday again, almost 3 months after that first day in the garage. Mark was engrossed in the newspaper, his morning ritual. The children were playing a board game on the floor, their innocent laughter echoing through the house. Thoughtful, I was making pancakes, the smell of maple syrup and butter filling the air, a scent that used to evoke comfort and warmth, but now only highlighted the gaping chasm within me. Sad, I looked at Mark, at the slight gray dusting his temples, the comfortable slump of his shoulders as he read. He was a good man, a truly good man. He loved our children fiercely. He had built this life for us, worked tirelessly. He trusted me implicitly. Tearful, and I, in my desperate pursuit of something I couldn't even name, had shattered that trust into a million irreparable pieces, crying. Then I looked at my children, Maya and Leo, their faces bright with concentration as they strategized over a plastic game piece. Their innocence was a sharp physical pain in my chest. Angry. What kind of mother was I? A liar, a deceiver. The life I was living was a complete fabrication, built on a foundation of betrayal. Every day I spent with them, every hug, every bedtime story, was tainted by the knowledge of my actions. Sad, I was slowly, irrevocably poisoning their world, even if they didn't know it yet.
A wave of nausea washed over me, stronger than any I had felt before. My hands started to tremble, and I almost dropped the spatula. The metallic taste returned, sharper, more acrid. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It was a profound, soul-deep self-hatred, a physical manifestation of my own moral decay. The secrecy, the lies, the constant vigilance, it had all become an unbearable burden, a crushing weight that was slowly suffocating me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. The woman I had become was a stranger, grotesque and unrecognizable. My heart began to pound erratically, a frantic warning bell in my ears. My vision blurred slightly, and the warmth of the kitchen suddenly felt stifling, oppressive. A cold sweat broke out on my skin, even though the room was a comfortable temperature. It was a full-blown panic attack, rising from the depths of my poisoned conscience. I gripped the countertop, fighting.
Or breath, the edges of my vision starting to narrow. I heard the muffled sounds of Mark turning a page, of the children's excited shouts, but they seemed far away, distorted as if I were underwater. Whispers. I staggered out of the kitchen, whispering a choked, "I'll be right back," to Mark, who barely registered my departure, crying. I made it to the bathroom, leaning over the cold porcelain of the toilet, dry heaving until my throat was raw and my eyes burned with tears. My body shook uncontrollably, tearful. When there was nothing left to expel, I slid to the floor, my back against the cool tiles, my head buried in my knees.
In that moment, curled on the bathroom floor, gasping for air, I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. The lie was destroying me, piece by agonizing piece. The thought of confessing, of the inevitable fallout, was terrifying, a precipice from which I would surely fall to my doom. I pictured Mark's face, etched with pain, the light in his eyes extinguished. I pictured my children, their confusion, their hurt, the loss of their stable world. I pictured the utter devastation I would wreak upon our family, upon Mark's family, Liam, the shame, the scandal. It would be a cataclysm. But the alternative? Living another day, another week, another year under the suffocating blanket of my secret was worse. It was a slow, agonizing death of my soul. I wanted to be free, not of consequence, not of blame, but of the lie itself. I yearned for the sharp, stinging pain of truth, however brutal, over the dull, constant ache of deceit, the decision.
Unsolidified in that cold, silent bathroom, I would confess. The word echoed in my mind, a terrible, freeing bell. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, I didn't know what would happen after, but I knew I couldn't bear another moment as the woman I had become. Sad. The path ahead was dark, filled with unimaginable pain, but it was the only path forward. I slowly pushed myself up, my legs trembling, and walked back towards the bright kitchen, towards the life I was about to shatter, towards the truth that would surely rip us all apart. Sighs. My chest ached with a terrible resolve, a strange, grim determination. The crash was coming, and I was finally ready to face it.